On September 3rd, 1965, in Exeter, New Hampshire, a young man stumbles through the darkness, terrified. Above him, a massive glowing craft hovers silently, lighting up the night. What he saw was just the beginning of strange lights and a possible government cover-up that still haunts this quiet New England town. Was it aliens, secret experiments, or something even darker? Tonight, the gang dives into the Exeter Incident, one of New England's most chilling UFO encounters. So turn off your lights, lock your doors, and get ready. It's about to get weirder after dark. Welcome back to Weirder After Dark, the podcast we get into everything New England weird. My name is Sean, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I am Chris.
And I'm Cathy.
And we have a tale today that is actually hitting on something that's happening right now. The New Jersey drones. Have y'all seen that? Have you heard about that yet?
I'm not going to lie, I did not hear anything about it.
You haven't heard
until
this?
the group text message was blowing up. No, I didn't hear anything about it.
I don't watch the news, but 3 or 4 people asked me about it.
No way.
Because they know I do the podcast, so
Yeah.
I had to go look it up. It is a little strange.
It's a little strange, right? I mean, they've got SUV-shaped drones in the sky patrolling a bunch of different places right inside of New Jersey. And people last night said they saw some in New Hampshire.
Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut.
I mean, do we have a take here? Is this aliens? Are they here? Are they here to do this? Or is this like, a corporation? Is it a summer blockbuster film?
I thought it was really strange, the government's response. They're like, nothing to see here. Not it's under investigation. Not that we're looking into it. It's like, Nope, we're going to leave this up to the local police.
They pretty much said not a threat. It is not a U.S. government drone, and it's not any of our enemies, but it's not doing anything.
Yeah, why not put people's mind at ease? Why
Yeah.
not say, we got this, don't worry about it.
I don't know. I'm smelling a cover-up, because if it's aliens, I find it really weird that they installed some FAA-approved lighting on their vehicles. I find that strange, but, hey, who am I to judge? Kathy, any thoughts?
I don't know. I'm trying to pull up a video right now. Oh, shit.
Live response.
So, this is the first time that I'm, really getting, a good, damn. It's it's hovering over, and it does. It has, the flashing lights like an airplane, but it's not an airplane because it looks like it's hovering, a lot lower.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. No one's been abducted yet, so... Yeah, no. What if I told you that I'm actually sharing a story here today that is a lot alike what is happening in New Jersey right now?
Ooh, timely.
It's a tale about the Exeter Incident. Have you two heard of the Exeter Incident before?
I have not heard of it.
I've heard of Barney and Benny Hill abductions, never the Exeter Incident, though.
I'm not going to lie. I thought when people talked about, Exeter has the Alien Fest every year, I assumed it was about Betty and Barney Hill.
Oh, it's not?
It's not. This is not about Betty and Barney Hill. This is about a unique incident that happened in Exeter, and I'm going to share that story today. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
It's approximately 12:30 a.m. It's Friday, September 3rd, 1965, Labor Day weekend. Patrolman Eugene Bertrand is cruising down a portion of Route 101. It's a warm, clear, windless night in New Hampshire. The visibility is described as perfect for miles. No fog, nothing. Bertrand even notices how crisp the stars look against the dark skies. He's approximately 2 miles outside of Exeter when he spots a car on the side of the road under an overpass. Assuming some likely car trouble, he pulls his patrol car to the side of the road to offer assistance. As Bertrand approaches the car, he notices a single passenger at the wheel. It's a woman. As Bertrand engages the woman, he reports she's frantic, struggling to keep her composure, and is terrified. Stumbling through her words, she states she's too shaken up to drive and details an incredible set of events that had just unfolded. According to the woman, for the last 12 miles, something has been following her. Bertrand looks around the highway, but no other cars are in sight. There's no lights, there's no sounds, he sees nothing. The woman continues. She shares that a huge, silent, red glowing airborne object had been tailing her for 6 miles, ever since she left Epping. She claims the object has moved at speeds that she couldn't even comprehend. Still trembling, she tells Bertrand, it was an elliptical shape and it had bright flashing red lights. She didn't even know what to do because all she could do was see the lights and they slowly were getting closer and closer to her car until it was just feet away. And then it was directly above her. Right as she hit the overpass, the object just took off at a tremendous speed and disappeared into the stars just as quickly as it came. Now Bertrand, a 4-year Air Force veteran who worked on the Air Force refueling missions, this guy knows his way around an airplane. And what this woman's describing right now is very out of the ordinary. He's not sure what to think about her story, so he decides, I'm just going to try my best to calm this woman down, reassure her, let her know everything's okay. He asks the woman, where's the object now? How could it leave the line of sight on this clear night? If this happened, where is it? She points to the horizon, to a small, bright light, miles off into the distance. Bertrand leans in. He kind of looks at the light. He sees it, but it's so far away, and to him, it was just a normal looking light, probably just an airliner or a plane from one of the local businesses. Nothing spectacular, nothing worth writing home about. So Bertrand decides let's look for some signs of alcohol here. So he starts looking around the car. He doesn't see anything, doesn't smell anything on her breath. This woman's frightened, but by what? He doesn't have the slightest clue. With this story of an unidentified flying object, he can only think, what a kook this woman is. This woman has lost her mind.
He's thinking, I'm filling out the paperwork for an IEA. She's going to the state hospital at this point.
What's an IEA?
It's a involuntary emergency.
So she's going to get like 72 hours in a padded room.
72 hours in a padded room, exactly.
Can I get one?
Yeah.
After about 15 minutes, the woman, still shaking and probably embarrassed and questioning if even she believes what she just saw, she tells Bertrand she's calm enough, I can drive home, and she goes along her way. Bertrand, unconvinced anything noteworthy happened, he doesn't even radio the event in the station. Instead, he hops back into his cruiser and he continues down 101. Bertrand doesn't know it yet, but this is just the beginning of a night he will never forget. It's approximately 2 a.m. now. It's still the same warm, clear September night, but now we have 18-year-old Norman Muscarello has been walking north for hours up Route 150. Earlier that evening, he had embarked on his 12-mile walk from Amesbury, Massachusetts. A walk that would take him from Amesbury through the small town of Kensington and finally to his mother's house where he lives in Exeter. You might be thinking, what the hell is Norman, 18 years old, doing walking 12 miles at 2 a.m. in the morning? Well, you see, in 3 weeks, Norman's going to be leaving for the Navy. So a few days earlier, he'd sold his car to save up some cash. Undeterred by the lack of his vehicle, Norman had been visiting his girlfriend in Amesbury that evening, and he actually had a ride home lined up. However, he missed that opportunity and was left with only one option, to hitchhike all the way home back to Exeter.
When I was 18, I'd watch 12 miles for some too.
Yeah, I roamed around the Cape a lot, walking around.
Chris, you walked 12 miles to get some?
When I was 18.
The things we do. Well, unfortunately for Norman, there would be no cars on Route 150 this evening, so he'd be walking back the entire distance. With 10 miles behind him, Norman is in Kensington, only about 2 miles from his mother's house. Norman has reached a stretch of road that has 2 homes and a small field to his right. It's a 10-acre field rimmed by tall evergreens. To the left of the field is a non-colonial of an elderly couple, the Russell residence. To the right of the field, about 100 yards away, is the small saltbox-style farm of Carl Dining. The Dining family keeps some small horses and other small livestock on the farm. And it's when Norman reaches the field, his night takes a spectacular turn. I'm going to use Norman's own words to describe the remaining of this event. I was just past Dining Farm. There's a little field on the right-hand side. I observed this pulsating light coming from the north, heading southwesterly direction towards where I was. I assume the speed must have been something terrific because it came up on me all of a sudden, pulsating erratically. I couldn't make out any distinct pattern, circles, or anything like that. It was just very, very bright. I didn't know what it was. There was absolutely no sound other than the fact I heard the horses from Dining's field raising holy hell kicking the barn. Even the crickets seemed to just quit in that moment. My attention was fixed on these lights, and then it passed over me and kind of just disappeared. I don't know which direction it went in. I was kind of dazed. My eyes were like, seeing spots you go through when somebody takes a picture of yourself with a camera. Just when my eyes got cleared, son of a gun, here it comes again. At this point, Norman thought the object was going to hit him. It was coming right at him. So he continues, I just froze up. I didn't know what to do. I got scared. So I ran across the street. I actually fell into a ditch and I laid there with my head down and I looked up. The next house down from the Dinings, the whole side of the building turned blood red from how close the object was. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. It was a white house and these lights were still pulsating in erratic positions. I couldn't make out any design or silhouette at all. And then it took off. I got up out of the ditch and I ran to the Russell house. I pounded on the door. No response there. I ran back to the street and then all of a sudden I got so lucky because here comes a car. I wasn't going to let it go by. So I stood right in the middle of the road just waving my arms. Once in the car, the couple drove Norman Muscarello to the Exeter Police Department. Norman would actually go on to expand these claims by describing the object that he referred to as the thing as follows. It was 80 to 90 feet in diameter. He said it was bigger than a house. It had these brilliant pulsating lights that he already talked about, bright, red, pulsating, and apparently they were pulsating around a rim. And he reiterated again and again, it was utterly silent.
That makes it creepier, right?
Yeah, right?
So this is the second person who's telling the same story.
Same story. Unfortunately for Norman, this won't be his last experience with the thing tonight. The time is now 2:24 a.m. Reginald Scratch Tolan sits at the front desk of the Exeter police station when Norman storms in. It hasn't even been 20 minutes since Norman has seen the terrifying experience with the thing. Tolan remembers Norman was white, pale white, and shaking, and seemed to be in a state of shock. At that point, Officer Tolan didn't know exactly what happened. But as he watched Norman shaking, he helped him light a cigarette. From this point forward, Norman would report to be chain smoking, cigarette after cigarette after cigarette, in an attempt to just try to regain any bit of his own composure. After Norman shared his experience, he told Officer Tolan, "I know you don't believe me, and I don't blame you, but you gotta send someone out there with me." Tolan was puzzled, unsure what to believe. What he did believe, though, was this kid just experienced something very traumatic. There was something about Norman's sincerity, so Tolan radioed a cruiser to come pick Norman up and to go investigate the claims. As Tolan radios out to the officers on duty, who picks up? Patrolman Eugene Bertrand is the first to respond.
The one who
wait, that's the one that got the woman.
Yes.
Yeah. Tolan asked Bertrand to come back to the station as there's been a report of an unidentified craft with fascinating red lights that was reported to be flying low and terrorizing a young boy. I want you to imagine Bertrand in the moment receiving this radio call.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, okay, that's bullshit. And then he gets a second call.
Yeah.
That's gotta be a little freaky.
Right? The emotions you must be feeling. Well, in Bertrand's own words, it was almost a perfect match from the odd occurrence with the woman on Route 101. Yeah. It took less than 10 minutes for Bertrand to arrive back at the station. When he walks in, he sees Tolan and Norman, and he shares the experience from the woman on Route 101. He shares how she saw an elliptical-shaped object with brilliant red flashing lights, how it moved at a tremendous speed, how it seemed to almost toy with the woman as it chased her car. Then, how it just took off right into the horizon. Bertrand then looked at Norman and said, "What do you think?" And Norman looks back at him and goes, "Sounds exactly like what I saw."
Wow. That's freaky.
Yeah.
What do? You hear these stories of people having this, and you can be skeptical and you can be like, oh, they're having a psychotic break. But then when you have multiple people having the same experience, how do you justify that?
Just wait, Cathy, buckle in.
Oh, okay. All right.
At this point, I'm thinking as an officer, okay, these two are working together to make up the story for some weird reason.
Yeah.
I'm still there.
Do they have any connection whatsoever?
Nope, nothing at all. Bertrand didn't need any more convincing. Although he still wasn't sure exactly what was going on or if anything was going on, he decided it was best to have Norman take him back to the field and he'd have a look around. What were the odds this was real? And if it was real, could two separate individuals confuse a plane or something else as an unidentified craft? Well, who better than to help debunk the situation than a 4-year United States Air Force veteran with experience in dozens of different types of planes?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
How low was it hovering to the ground? How close was it to them?
Did
they say that at all?
Yeah, about 100 feet right above the trees. And we're going to get really specific on some details in a few seconds.
Okay.
It's now 3 a.m. Bertrand and Norman Muscarello are back on Route 150 at the field in Kensington. Bertrand parked his cruiser right next to telephone pole number 668. That night was still moonless and clear. Visibility was described as unlimited. After sitting in front of the field for some time, guess what they see?
No shit.
They see nothing.
Oh.
They see nothing.
Damn it. Asshole.
Norman was still wound up about the events, so he decides that they should head out into the field and try to get a better look. Before they do that, Bertrand radios into the station and tells Tolan, "I'll be out of the cruiser for a few minutes, so if you don't get an answer on the radio, don't worry about it, everything's okay." As Norman and Bertrand walk through the down-sloping field, the Russell residence was to their left and the dining home was to their right. About 100 yards into the field was a fenced-in corral used for the horses, and the entire 10-acre field was surrounded by trees. As Norman and Bertrand moved toward the corral, the only lights that were seen was the lights from Bertrand's flashlight as it danced along the tree line and illuminated the field they walked. As they reached the fence, Bertrand told Norman that what he probably saw was a helicopter that could easily describe how close to the ground it was. The bright light could have been coming from it. It could explain how it felt like it was chasing him as it was hovering near him. Then Bertrand turned and shined his flashlight north toward the tree line. It was like that soul movement activated something, because the whole field suddenly felt like it came to life. The horses, exactly in that moment on the dining farm, began to kick, fuss, whine. They started to hit the fence. It was like they were irritated somehow. They were pissed at something. 1 second earlier, everything was perfectly still, and now it was chaos almost from those horses. Then out of nowhere, the dogs from the nearby houses began to howl. The noises echoed and got louder and louder, and then Norman yelled, "I see it! I see it!" And so did Bertrand. The next line of events were anxiety-filled and what happened so terribly fast. But both men saw the thing slowly rise above the trees beyond the corral. It rose directly above 2 large pine trees. Bertrand reported it made no sound. It was a brilliant, roundish object, and it came towards them like a leaf floating from a tree. It was almost wobbling as if it moved. The entire area, out of nowhere, was suddenly engulfed in an instant, brilliant red light. The white sides of Carl Dining's salt box turned blood red, just like in Norman's previous experience. The Russell house now, some 100 yards away, also turned blood red. Bertrand, not knowing what to do, grabbed for his gun. Norman reported that Bertrand dropped to one knee, pointed his gun directly at the object, and with fear in his voice yelled, "I will shoot it! I will shoot it!"
Why do we always want to shoot shit?
Oh my god.
Just because we don't know what it is does not mean they're here to destroy us.
America.
Exactly, right? Watch out, New Jersey. We're going to be shooting fireworks at those crafts soon.
I mean, come on.
Police officer who spent 4 years in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So he's seen all kinds of different planes.
Yep.
He knows what they look like, taillights, nighttime.
Yep. He actually used to do refueling missions. So he would even be in the air, 2 planes coming together, flashing lights, refueling each other. He has firsthand experience doing all this stuff.
Oof. Yeah, that adds some credibility to this, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But instead of pulling the trigger, he thought it better to not. Who knows what it would do or what the hell it could unleash if he did do it. Norman at this point stood frozen. Bertrand yelled at him to run and take cover inside the cruiser, but Norman couldn't move. Bertrand, scared of radiation or unsure of exactly what this blood red violet ray that was hitting them was, grabbed Norman and dragged him towards the cruiser. Once at the cruiser, Bertrand grabbed his radio and said, "My God, I see the damn thing myself." Whew. Bertrand and Norman watched the craft from inside the cruiser. They watched it hover, stationary. Bertrand reports the craft was about 100 feet above them and only about 100 yards away, incredibly low to the ground. It was rocking back and forth on its axis and absolutely silent. The pulsating red light seemed to dim from left to right and from right to left in a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pattern, lasting about 2 seconds per cycle. He couldn't perfectly make out the shape because of the lights, describing it as, "Try to imagine the shape of a car with its headlights coming directly at you in the middle of the night." The men watched it hover for several minutes. It wasn't a quick experience. Several minutes.
That's a long time.
Then it began to slowly move eastward toward the town of Hampton. They described the movement as erratic and defying all conventional aerodynamic patterns. It darted, could turn on a dime, then it could immediately just slow down. As the thing, as they referred to it, made its way toward Hampton, patrolman David Hunt of Exeter Police Department, who had heard the radio calls between Bertrand and Tolan, showed up. Hearing the commotion and the fanatical descriptions, he had to see this for himself. Both Bertrand and Hunt both stood at the edge of the field watching the thing as it slowly made its way eastward.
So now you have 2 police officers watching this thing.
Watching this thing as it moves.
This story's getting more compelling as we go.
Yeah, just wait. Hunt confirmed Norman and Bertrand's accounts. He too had saw the craft's erratic movements, its pulsating lights, and confirmed it made no sound. It moved in silence. Hunt even remarked, if it was any lower, it would have skimmed the damn trees. Right after the thing was out of sight headed towards Hampton, a B-47 came over the field. Both Bertrand and Hunt stated you could clearly tell the difference. There was no comparison between these 2 crafts. Well, although this is the last time Bertrand, Hunt, or Norman would see the craft, this isn't the end of our story. This isn't where it ends.
It gets weirder.
It's 3:17 a.m. back at Exeter Police Department. Officer Tolan can't sit still. Somehow 2 of his fellow officers just confirmed the sighting of the thing. It's real. As he's digesting the chain of events, one of the local night operators informs him of a strange phone call she just received. A man had phoned in from Hampton and could barely speak straight. He told the operator that a flying saucer had come right at him. He could still see it, but before he could finish his next sentence, the phone cut out.
Ooh, yeah.
The operator in Tolan immediately reported the incident to Hampton police, and it even shows on the Hampton blotter records today. I want to read that to y'all. Exeter police report UFO. Units 2, 4, and Pease Air Force Base have been alerted. At 3:17, a call came from Exeter operator and Officer Tolan, advised that a male subject called the police regarding a large UFO.
Call
immediately cut off.
Oof.
That's literally written in their records.
Call immediately cut off. That's even scary.
that hits, right? That hits.
I got hairs on the back of my neck standing up here.
Just wait, Chris. This would wrap up the now famous sightings that occurred on September 3rd, 1965. During the same evening, 3 civilians, 2 Exeter police officers corroborated similar events and described a similar craft. A large, silent, elliptical-shaped object that could stop on a dime, hover, immediately take off at unimaginable speeds. It had remarkable red lights that could drench an entire 10-acre field and 2 houses in blood red. Red lights that also moved in strange patterns. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 2-second intervals. And as crazy as all of this sounds, our story still doesn't end here. It's now 1 p.m. on September 3rd, just 10 hours after this incident. That's when Major David H. Griffin and Lieutenant Alan Brandt arrived from Pease Air Force Base. These were 2 relatively serious men, but they seemed highly interested in the evening's events. Over the next few hours, Major Griffin and Lieutenant Brandt would interview Toland, Bertrand, Hunt, and Norman. They would visit the scene of the incident and even interview several Exeter townspeople. However, a few pieces of information that Major Griffins and Lieutenant Brandt shared kind of stick out from this. I'll share a couple with you. First, they stated the Pease Air Force Base reported no aircraft in the area that evening. Second, during the interviews, Major Griffin and Lieutenant Brandt mentioned to Bertrand, Hunt, and Toland that Pease has been getting almost nightly reports of UFO sightings for the past week.
What?
So other people saw stuff and was reporting
it? For the last week, they've been getting
week.
Non-stop phone calls at night about UFOs in the sky.
Who are these 2? They worked at the Air Force
Yeah,
base?
These are people working at Pease Air Force who get sent out to investigate any weird claims of oddities.
So kind of like a local Blue Book.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Project Blue Book's going to show up here in a few minutes. Good call, Cathy. I got one last weird oddity. Major Griffin and Lieutenant Brandt told everyone it was in their best interest to stay quiet and to not talk to reporters. However, they didn't realize this, but it was far too late for that. A reporter from the Manchester Union Leader had already beat the Pease Air Force investigators to the scene and had taken statements from all of the Exeter police officers. Over the next several weeks, dozens of phone calls and experience poured into the local police stations. One reporter, John Fuller, interviewed over 60 people on record, describing an almost identical experience to that of Bertrand, Hunt, and Norman. And I want to share a few of those noteworthy experiences with you all here. The first one we're going to call a Smith sighting. A 17-year-old, his mother, and his aunt reported seeing an object with a red light on top, and it glowed bright white on the bottom. They reported the object passed over their car and stopped midair, perfectly still, perfectly silent. It didn't make any type of sound before coming back for a second pass, and then a third pass, and then the third time once it got past the car, it took off into the horizon. The trio, freaked out, immediately headed towards the Exeter police station until they started second-guessing themselves. They're just like, whoa. Did we really see what we think we saw? They didn't know if it was real. So instead of going to the police station to report it, they decided, let's hightail it back to the location we just saw this and see if it's still there and we can see it again. When they arrived back to the location, it was there. The object eased its way back over the top of the car and then took off. So that was the Smith sighting. We got 3 more people. The kid, 17 years old, his mom, and his aunt.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it comes to like ghost or like, oh, I think I heard a noise or I think I hear footsteps, that you could like mistake other noises for.
Yeah.
But if you have a giant-assed fucking aircraft hovering over your car, there's no mistaking that, right? Like, there's no mistaking. Like, how do you question whether you saw that or not?
I've never seen a UFO.
Well, I haven't either.
But I can say that fear does some weird-ass shit to us. When you are just stricken with fear, you've never had something happen to you, and then all of a sudden when you try to recall the events, even minutes later, you remember it slightly different than how it happened. Or if you experience something with another person, you share the experiences, and all of a sudden you're like, that's not what happened. That didn't line up. Like,
maybe
our brains do crazy things.
I still just think that if you have a giant fucking aircraft hovering over your car...
Yeah, for the record, I agree 100%. I have no idea. We've got the therapist in the room. Talk to us.
When things are so fantastical or outside the norm, they will definitely start to question what they saw and try to come up with rational. The mind wants a rational answer.
Yeah.
And when it can't get a rational answer, it'll start to put in information that wasn't actually there. It must have been an airplane. It must have been.
Great point. And I also want to call out that, like, you got to think of the year we're in, too. We're in 1965.
True.
Technically, the Betty Barney Hill story has already happened at this point. That was in 1961.
Yeah.
But aliens and UFOs, This phenomena is just beginning during this time period.
When was Area 51?
I think the 50s, if I had to take a guess.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the stuff happened after World War II, and really when they were starting to be nervous about kind of the Russian threat.
Yeah, well, people were looking to the skies more in fear during that time. Right after World War II and the Red Scare.
Red Scare. All this stuff is happening within the last 5-10 years. This is also a conversation that's not a comfortable conversation in the public, right? The next sighting I want to share with you all is called the Shippelman and Calogaropolis sighting. This was 2 boys in their late teens who were out driving in Hampton at 4 a.m. They were driving down the boulevard when an object came upon them from the ocean. It hovered directly towards their car. It got closer and closer until it suspended itself directly above them. At first, when it was coming at them, they thought it might be like a plane trying to take an emergency landing or something. But whatever it was, they were scared shitless. So they hit the gas and they just sped off the second it was on top of them. At first, the object went the opposite direction. However, right as they got down to the end of the boulevard, they turned around and took a look, and they saw the object shooting directly towards them at a tremendous speed. Panicked, not knowing what to do, they just pulled over to the side of the road. Then, it just took off right before it hit them into a different direction.
It's becoming apparent that something was in the sky that night.
Right.
And there's way too many witnesses, way too many reports.
Yeah. And these reports are all happening. So this isn't all on September 3rd. These additional ones here, they're happening days afterwards, weeks afterwards, a bunch of reports.
Okay.
So account after account, just like this, continue to pour in from the area. They came from Kensington, Hampton, Southampton, Exeter, Fremont, Kingston, all the surrounding towns. John Fuller, the reporter who was interviewing witnesses of these crafts, and the guy who later would end up actually writing a book called The Exeter Incident, was able to actually get more than just civilian testimony. Fuller convinced several military men to share their own sightings to put them on record. A Coast Guardman said he saw a reddish and orangish disc move slowly up the beach, no more than 15 feet off the ground. An Air Force pilot said that he had been commanded to shoot down anything they saw in the skies. However, anytime they saw one close enough, the crafts were invulnerable and capable of outmaneuvering any aircraft that they had.
He was told to shoot this thing down?
Shoot to kill.
That's what he claims.
That is crazy.
Get it out of the sky.
Yeah.
Why do we always want to shoot shit?
Especially where it hasn't hurt anyone.
Right.
It didn't abduct anyone.
It's just hanging out.
Yeah,
I
mean, I know it's scary, but he's not...
America.
He's not doing anything to hurt anybody. He's just kind of hovering, checking shit out. And then where everyone's like, shoot it down.
He's taking selfies.
He's just
Look
sightseeing.
at these earthlings.
Earth, bitch. A radio operator from Pease said a craft came directly towards the base. It was clocked visually and on the base's radar scope. It seemed the craft was gonna land at the base, but it just ended up hovering around it. They watched as it went from almost perfectly still to speeding off at a jaw-dropping speed at over 800 miles an hour. And that was clocked by the radar scope itself.
Holy shit.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. A number of families actually live on Pease Air Force Base. And from base, those families reported one really, really odd event that I want to share with y'all. They reported a brilliant orange light landed directly off the edge of the runway of Pease Base. Some officers' wives claimed that the light was so bright that they thought it was actually morning and it was time to wake up and get ready for their day.
So that I was like the sun coming up.
Yeah. The commander of Pease Base apparently and reportedly immediately cut off all communication outside of the base and sent the base's fire unit to go check it out at the runway. Right as the fire unit got to the base, it just shot into the air at unclocked fast speeds.
Maybe it's running away because everybody wants to shoot it.
yeah, that's legit. That's legit.
God.
As you're telling the story, it's really hitting home because I used to live in Newmarket, right next door. I played at Pease Air Force Base on the golf course. This whole area, I know it very well, so I'm picturing it as you're telling the story.
I was doing the same thing, just driving through, to get to...
I know the road from Amesbury to Exeter.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you all were going to recall this, because when you lived in Newmarket, I remember driving on those weird windy roads after I got off Exit 3 on 101. I literally drove down 101 to get to your house, and I was I was replaying those drives in my head.
Yeah,
as
and
I
then
was,
Kensington and Exeter from Newmarket, over through that area.
Other than 101 and 125, it's all back roads.
Very rural back road. Yeah. Well, with all these countless stories, surely the government would step in. Hell, there were sites by police officers, Coast Guardmen, military men, all reporting something very similar. This was unlike anything any of those individuals had ever seen. Well, In response to the activity in Exeter and the outcry for answers from the local communities, the Pentagon was forced to release a statement. On October 27th, 1965, and this is what it read. The Pentagon believes that after an intensive investigation, we have come up with a natural explanation. The reports stemmed from a high-altitude strategic air command exercise out of Western Mass that was going on in the same area. A second important factor was the weather inversion that evening, where cold air is trapped between warm air, thus causing stars and planets to twinkle. We believe those people saw stars and planets in an unusual formation.
Come on, man.
Yeah, that's literally what
That's
the
not
Pentagon
what they were describing.
said.
None of that sounds like what we just heard.
Yeah, and I want you to think the policemen from Exeter, Bertrand,
Yeah,
and
he's gonna
Hunt,
be pissed.
They're pissed, right? They're disgusted by this and completely undermined all of these Exeter officers' credibility. Bertrand actually said in response to this, if they want to turn out ridiculous statements like that, that's their business. I know what I saw. They don't. And of course, I can't accept what they say. I know for sure it had nothing to do with the weather. I know for sure it was a craft and it was not any plane in existence. I know for sure it was not more than 100 feet off the ground. It didn't have wings, and I know it wasn't a helicopter. It was no balloon. It is absolutely stupid to release something like that.
Oh, I like
Good
this
for
guy.
him.
Yeah. In a weirder turn of events, in the third week in November 1965, Bertrand and Hunt both received individual letters from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. The letter said, "Our investigation and evaluation of the sightings indicates a possible association with an 8th Air Force operation called Big Blast. In addition to the aircraft from this operation, there were 5 B-47 type aircrafts flying in the area during this period. Before a final evaluation of your sightings can be made, it is essential for us to know if either of you witnessed any aircraft in the area during this time period, either independently or in connection with the objects observed. Since there were many aircraft in the area at the time, there were also no reports of unidentified objects from those personnel engaged in the air operation. We might then assume that the objects observed between midnight and 2 a.m. must be associated with this military air operation." And this was signed by Hector Quintanilla, Junior Major, United States Air Force Base, and Chief of Project Blue Book.
Convenient.
Project Blue Book was trying to come up with all kinds of, to explain away these things and bury them. I mean, they literally came out and said, our job was to bury these things.
Yeah, and I actually did a little homework on Project Blue Book. They actually had over 14,000 different investigations, and they would take each of these investigations and put them in 4 major categories. Category 1 was like they figured it out, they knew exactly what it was. Category 2 was unidentified, but it didn't cause any threat to anything. Category 3 was unidentified, but like still looking into it, and we don't think it's aliens. And then there was one category that remained that was like unidentified, could be like extraterrestrial from outside of here. Out of their 14,000 reports, only 700 landed in one of those 3 unidentified categories. 0 of them ended in, we think this is something like extraterrestrial or a threat. After this report from the Pentagon, basically saying you saw twinkles in the sky, and now this other report coming from Wright-Patterson Base basically being like, oh, hey, just a little drill that we were running. Don't worry about it. Bertrand and Hunt both were pissed, but they were pissed for more than just, hey, you all are making us look bad. I don't know if you all caught it, but there were some really interesting discrepancies from that last letter I just read you. This statement from Wright Air Force Base, and it said it was its final evaluation hadn't been made. Well, if it hadn't been made, why did the Pentagon release a statement saying a final evaluation had been made? Why are all of a sudden these conflicting pieces of information? What is right? Have they made an evaluation or have they not? Not only that, the statement had the wrong date on it. It said Big Blast happened on 9/2. The sightings occurred on 9/3. The date wasn't even correct on this, but it gets even stranger. They said Big Blast occurred between 12 and 2 a.m. Well, guess what? Bertrand, Hunt, and Norman had their last group experience at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Based on the timeline you gave us, it's over. So it doesn't even line up with the events that occurred. That's why, I don't know if you noticed in my story, I was giving you exact times that every single thing happened. And now the Pentagon and Wright Air Force Base are publishing this, and none of it adds up.
Yeah, something about this story is not adding up.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. Now, with these things not seeming to add up, Bertrand and Hunt actually both wrote letters to Wright Air Force Base twice over the next 2 months, outlining all of their problems, their conclusions, and their concerns, and even commenting on how the government incompetence was destroying their reputation and credibility as police officers and putting into question a bunch of outrageous claims. They didn't respond for a long time, but finally in February 1966, Bertrand and Hunt did receive a response. I want to read it to you all. Based on additional information you submitted to our UFO investigation office, we have been unable to identify the object you observe. In 19 years of investigating over 10,000 reports of unidentified flying objects, the evidence has proved almost conclusively that reported aerial phenomena have been objects either created or set off by man, generated by atmospheric conditions, or caused by celestial bodies. Thank you for your reporting, and I regret any inconvenience this may have caused you.
Oh my god.
So
how condescending.
We don't have an answer, but here's a bunch of random answers it could be.
Bertrand and Hunt never received any additional correspondence from the Pentagon, Pease Air Force Base, or Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. On April 5th, 1966, the Exeter Incident became the very first UFO phenomena discussed at a congressional hearing. In fact, the Exeter Incident is credited for helping the UFO conversation gain steam, credibility, and slowly started to move the conversation into a public debate. So, what was it? Well, we'll probably never truly know for sure, but there have been some guesses. Reporter John Fulling, who spent countless weeks and hours gaining all the first-hand testimony, had a theory that the crafts were somehow related to high-power transmission lines. He had documented over 73 mentions of crafts being near, on top of, or around power lines. He thought somehow they were using its energy. He further bought into this theory when the Northeast blackout in 1965 occurred. This blackout turned off the power for 1/5 of the nation's population. After this blackout, there were some weird oddities reported. Dozens of people claimed to see weird glowing objects in the sky right before the blackout happened. One flight training officer and his young co-pilot, who he was training, even claimed to have seen a glowing silver disc over the Niagara Falls power station right where the failure occurred. We could dig into this topic probably itself in a future episode because some believe this blackout is a huge UFO conspiracy and it was actually caused by UFOs.
Oh, that's super interesting, right?
Yeah. But this event furthered John Fulling's belief of the UFO powerline connection. Other theories suggest that Bertrand, Hunt, and Norman saw what was a flying advertisement plane. Apparently, there was a plane that would fly around the area with a big billboard and had lights on it.
Yeah, I've
and
seen
it would just
them
be
at Hampton
advertisements.
Beach, right?
Yeah. However, this was quickly debunked as the owners of the plane confirmed it was not in the air on September 2nd or 3rd.
And
Nor
at
did
what, between 2 and 4 in the morning?
Yeah.
No.
Nor was it
Not a good time to advertise.
And
Yeah, there's a lot of
had
things wrong
blinking
with that
lights.
one.
Yeah.
Could it have been misidentified B-52s, B-47s, or some other plane from Pease Air Force Base, which was less than 20 miles away? Bertrand, a 4-year Air Force vet who ran refueling missions on those exact planes, as well as the KC Stratofreighters, those are the refueling planes, would say hell no to this, that it absolutely was none of those. Plus, these planes can't hover. They're not silent. There's no way they could be that low to the ground as what Hunt, Bertrand, and Norman and the entire southeastern coastline in New Hampshire witnessed. Plus, these planes were normal occurrences in the area. These people who live in this area, they're used to those types of planes flying around at all times of the day and night. They know these planes when they see them.
When we lived in Newmarket and Pease Air Force Base was right there, we watched all kinds of really cool planes fly overhead, but
Yeah.
you knew exactly what they were.
Yeah.
I heard a theory recently where they talked about the fact that, like, what we're seeing isn't actually, like, spacecraft or life from another planet or another solar system, but it's like from another dimension.
Ooh, dimensional beings.
Right. Yes. So that's
Bigfoot.
what we're seeing. And so having like the energy surges where it's causing power outages or like the animals are reacting in that way to the energy, maybe that's something to do with it. I
Is
mean,
it
I
a
don't know.
portal?
Not the portal.
It's a portal.
Not the portal.
Sean, it's a portal for aliens. How
do
does
not-
that make you feel?
I don't like it. That is scary. One report suggests that it was in fact a KC Stratofreighter, a refueling plane, and it should have been easily identifiable because the red light description provided matches exactly what happens on those planes. Remember that red light sequence? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in those 2-second intervals? Apparently, these Stratofreighter planes have that same exact lighting sequence. But again, Bertrand was literally on those planes. Those refueling missions,
Say,
those are the exact planes he was in.
Yeah, so he would recognize it.
Yeah, and he claims it wasn't even close. And not to mention, those planes, not silent, can't hover, don't come to complete stops and then just take off at fast speeds. And the people who reported this also did point out one other oddity. Those refueling planes, on the bottom of them, they do have this like metal pole that sticks out to refuel the other planes. And it does have like a little piece on the bottom that is known to sway in the air as the plane's moving. So they were just like, they said it swayed back and forth on an axis. They saw that motion, the red lights. We've got it right here. But I honestly don't think so. I don't think this is it.
Also not hovering 100 feet off the ground.
Yeah, there's just too
much. With no
sound. Exactly. There's too much to go against that theory.
So if this is like something that like has been watching us, could they potentially say like, okay, these are aircrafts that are in the sky. This is their light patterns. If we want to try to blend in, maybe making it so that they have the same pattern so that people would be like, oh, that's what that is.
Could be.
I don't know.
Could be, yeah, I could see like a mimicking
because
thing.
I wouldn't know what a refueling plane looked like.
No,
I mean,
I wouldn't know either.
I've seen a picture of it, but if I hadn't seen a picture of it, but if I saw it in the sky, I mean, would I be able to be like, that's what that plane is? Probably not.
Yeah. If I were to wager a guess on what this is, if I had to say, okay, if it's not aliens, what could it be? Well, I started doing some research about what we just talked about. Were there any aircrafts at the time that could vertical lift off, that could potentially hover? They actually call them VTOL aircrafts. If you think about the United States military, they actually have some of those in their military today that can take off, can hover, and then just jet off. Well, listen to what I found. The European, Russian, Canadian, and American governments were all experimenting with these type of crafts in the 1960s. In fact, they had some pretty radical designs. I couldn't find any written documentation saying tests were occurring in the New England area, but I did find several accounts of these experimental aircrafts getting their first tests in the early 1960s. Crafts like England's short SC.1 VTOL. I'll post an image of this on the Instagram, but it literally looks like a round cylinder engine and it can take off vertically and move up and down.
So could this have been like a cover up in the opposite way? Like,
well, yeah,
could the Air Force have this aircraft? Could they be out there like fucking around with this, like doing tests and then being like, oh shit, we're not supposed to, people saw this and we're not supposed to be doing this. So let's just say this happened and it kind of took on a life of its own.
And you got to think they're doing the same thing that they're doing in New Jersey right now.
Yeah.
Like they're coming out and saying, it's not a threat. We're not concerned about it. Yep. It's not the U.S. government, but don't worry about it, y'all. It's all good. That's exactly what they did.
And this would make sense why you have the Pentagon, Pease Air Force Base, and Wright-Patterson all giving different reports because they all knew what was going on, but they didn't talk to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
3 different cover-up stories.
And they can't come out and say, we're doing this.
Exactly. Okay, Cathy, I want you to real quick. There's a second craft that I found very interesting. It's called the Convair, Convair, Model 49.
Okay, so the second Google search I just want to put out there says for sale.
Nice. Well, if you hit images,
what the fuck?
You're going to see something that looks really intriguing. This was an experimental aircraft that was being designed in Canada and ultimately ended up getting sold to the United States in 1961. If you take a look at that image, that looks exactly like a flying spaceship.
That thing is badass.
Have you seen the flying squid? Come on, tell me you've Googled the flying squid.
The recent image that came out?
The recent image of the flying squid.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's what this looks like, only it doesn't have like the tentacles hanging down.
Yeah.
And I mean, this one it flies like almost like on like the squid's side.
Yeah.
But if you were just to do this and it was like to land and then go up and then fly that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's spooky, right? That's a spooky looking machine. That's exactly what we think alien crafts look like to this date.
When we get some podcast money, we should buy one of those.
Oh, hell yeah.
Are those for sale?
Apparently.
Yeah, we need one of those.
We need one of them. Now, these things, they're VTOLs, so that means vertical takeoff and landing. They can vertically take off and land. And that particular one that you're looking at not only had the ability to take off and land, the nose of it could actually rotate down so the people inside of the vehicle could actually see what they were looking at as the vehicle would move towards whatever destination it was. There are experimental crafts that look very similar and have the exact capabilities. Maybe there were some experimental takeoffs happening, and this was kind of a cover-up to just say, hey,
no,
don't
we
worry
weren't
about
doing
it.
that.
Yeah, that could fit. It's the right time. It's looks similar. I could see how people could get it confused. And even somebody who was in the Air Force for 4 years might not
That could throw them off.
They have this capability.
That checks every box in my book.
And if you're going to do like experimental flights that you don't want people to see, what better time to do it?
Yeah.
In the middle of the night like that.
Yeah.
Like nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah.
Although, why would they be testing it in a populated area?
Exeter is not that popular. I mean, Exeter's
Compared
kind of
to the desert,
now,
right?
But in
Yeah.
1965, though, what was the population in Exeter in 1965?
I don't know, but
Didn't
they
look it
had
up.
hundreds of people see this.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't test it in an area like
I would-
that. It's interesting that
I would challenge that because like I had that thought too. Like, why would you do this? But then I started thinking like, if you wanted to know if this craft could blend in, if this was going to look like a normal plane, if people would be freaked out by seeing this, maybe you have to run those type of tests. And to back that up, I actually did some research. The government, it was in like Kansas City. I can't remember what city it was, but they did supersonic boom tests over a particular city just to find out, are people going to be weirded out by this? Is this going to cause red flags? And it did. It
I
bugged
remember
people a
hearing
lot.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
People
So-
were freaked out.
Yeah. So like if they would do that, maybe they're just saying, let's see how people react to this. Will they see it in the night? Will it blend in? Are they going to think it's an airplane? And maybe it was some kind of test like that. So what exactly was it in the skies on September 3rd, 1965? Was it a twinkle of the stars or a weather inversion? Was it a misidentified craft? Was it an experimental plane that no one's seen before? Could it be aliens? I don't know. That's my story for y'all.
I love this story. That was so well told. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a blast to research.
I like it because I have no idea what it was.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we're any closer to an answer than when we started.
Those are the best stories, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think because anytime you have something, you have like people coming forward and telling stories like that, right? Like there's shit out there, right? But like, what is it? Like, I don't know what it is, but like,
Yeah.
is it interdimensional? Is it extraterrestrial? It's always so fascinating. It's almost like I want to have that experience.
It's like the Phoenix Lights, right? Thousands of people saw the Phoenix Lights and it got a bunch of media attention and no answer ever came out.
Yeah.
Like nobody's ever said, this is exactly what it was. And we just kind of move on.
Exactly. And I can't believe the New Jersey stuff. The drones is happening right as I was like writing this story. And it's like such a beautiful parallel.
We're recording right now and people are saying that they're seeing them in Manchester.
We definitely have to go check it out.
Yeah.
We have to go
So-
take a look.
I think we need to do that.
For sure.
It's kind of cold out. Can we just go look out the window?
No.
But I'm scared.
Layer up.
All right, gang, that wraps up here the story on the Exeter Incident. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, take a moment, visit us at our Instagram at Weirder After Dark. On there, I'll be dropping some images of the Exeter Police Department and officers, some images of some of those experimental planes that we went ahead and were just talking about. So check that out there. Also, don't forget, we are always releasing some spooky tales, and it's your spooky tales. So if you have anything weird or strange that has happened to you inside of New England, we want to hear about it. So shoot us an email and send it to thegang@weirderafterdark.com, and we may be sharing one of your tales on a future episode. And with that, remember, it always gets a little weirder after dark.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
I love you.